Hello, my name is Elsa Tar. Welcome to my Ecology Principles course project. I will be talking about the park versus the hiking trail as my two locations for this experiment. My hypothesis was if the Peruvian pepper trees do not have the same access to water, such as rain, sprinklers, etc., then the park pepper tree bud bunches will weigh more than the pepper tree bud bunches on the hiking trail. So what initially brought me to the Peruvian pepper tree as the organism that I wanted to create an experiment with was I was walking along one of our trails in the park, and it hangs rather low, so it actually can touch the top of your head or even run across your face. And I just thought it was an interesting tree to be thriving in the desert, so I wanted to know why there were so many of them and why they thrive here. So as I was out in the park, I noticed that the sprinklers were about to come on, so I thought I'd capture that, and I thought I would use that in my hypothesis. So I went into the middle of the park and I wanted to do a pan over of the trees that were in the park, and I took pictures as I started turning just to see what I could grab or screen grab. I'm editing these specific images here. This is how I decided to make my plots. I also repeated the same exact steps and process for the trail, the hiking trail, and the following clips you will see the actual trail that I chose. The plant life surrounding it is actually dead or dying, and there was no water source or direct water source unless it is from rainfall or from coming off of the sides of the hills. First, I wanted to keep the bunches separate, so I brought a plastic bag for the park and a paper bag for the hiking trail. I collected at least 25 bunches from each of the locations, and I chose samples from the hiking trail first because I was interested in seeing how many samples I could actually collect. As the trail had the least amount of pepper trees in the plot areas, I wanted to take as many as possible along the trail, and I collected some of that out. They were also on the ground, so as some of the branches were not always accessible along the way. Next, I went to the park, and I walked around to collect bunches from the trees and also along the ground. To keep it random, I also brought my 2-year-old along with me to gather bunches from the ground at both locations to keep it more anonymous. I also brought the bunches home with me to measure them because I didn't have the gram scale with me, so I wanted to do it at home. So the scale that I used was a scientific scale with grams that I used to measure with. I also decided to randomly select the bunches from the bags by placing my hand into the bag and pulling them out one by one to measure them. To make the experiment measurements more random, I also selected 10 bunches from each bag, and I wrote each measurement down on my iPad, and I created a small table to track my measurements. From the 20 bunches that were selected to measure from both locations, the one with the greater average was the pepper trees from the park. They also showed the greatest variability. I predicted the difference between the locations would be significant based on the mass or weight of the pepper tree buds. And the buds from the hiking trail were empty, dead, or dying, and the buds from the park were full and not falling off and showed signs of healthy, thriving buds. There were also no overlaps, which meant that the bunches were significantly different in size, and I believe that all of this data supports my initial hypothesis.